Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'll be showing you how I DIY'd a media unit transforming this space to this space. So, how did it start? Well, Carole and Phil, whose lovely home this is, were originally friends of my mum, and they followed me over on Instagram since I bought my first house and made a home account to document the journey. They've been able to see every project that I've done from the start, and they've always supported us. So one day, Carol reached out to me asking for help after a joiner had messed them around and dampened their idea to upgrade the living room with a media wall. They'd watched me build my own media wall on my Instagram, so wanted to explore whether this was something I'd be willing to do for others. Once we agreed to go ahead, Carol and Phil searched online for existing media units that they could gain inspo from. They sent me their two favourites, and I sat down to adapt a bespoke design that incorporated features from both, including floating shelves and hidden storage cupboards underneath. The vision was then in sight, so I was able to measure the wall and purchase the timber required. Meanwhile, Carol and Phil got dead excited choosing and ordering their fireplace. And now that you're up to speed and everything's ready to go, let's get building the media unit of Carol and Phil's dreams. First up, the old mantelpiece was removed and it was time to make a start on the timber framing. The living room carpet actually only butts up to that marble hearth that you see there, and as the carpet is already gripped perfectly in place, I didn't want to start cutting it back and moving gripper rods, etc. Removing the hearth would have created a gap, resulting in an uneven starting surface, but luckily I found that when the CLS timber was laid on its side, it was perfectly in level with the hearth. I therefore decided to leave the hearth in situ and build my timber frame either side of it, achieving a perfectly level and sturdy base. As I'd already configured the ideal height of where to position the TV and the fireplace on the wall, I therefore knew what height I'd be building my base up to. This is where the fireplace will sit and where the hidden storage will be incorporated. The timber frame was therefore built with this in mind. I actually made my cuts from the back of my van, as during this project there was a storm, so cutting outside wasn't ideal and I didn't want to mess up Carol and Phil's house too much. I incorporated enough upright studs to support the top of the timber frame, keeping it square and ensuring there'd be no sagging once the heavy fireplace was sat on top of it. I'd already marked the centre of the wall with a pencil line, so marked the fireplace as well to ensure I stay perfectly centre when I come to fix it in place. Happy with the strength of my frame, I moved on to cutting out the 12mm MDF top so that the fireplace would actually sit in it and remain secure, allowing no movement. Just like that. Now it was time to fix the TV bracket to the wall, ensuring I'm keeping perfectly central in order to line up exactly to the fireplace. Just like that. With the TV in place, I was then able to measure for the surrounding timber frame. I could have built the frame first and hung the TV afterwards, but this way Carol and Phil had the TV back when I'd finished for the day. Using CLS, I made cuts in advance in the van again and labelled them left and right so that it'd be easier when I brought them into the house and laid them out ready to fix together. Remember, old walls aren't always perfectly level or perpendicular, so factor this into your measurements to keep your frame square and level instead. And then spaced out each noggin evenly, marked the position on the wood and drilled 2 pilot holes on a diagonal for each one. With the help of the solid timber base frame I'd already built, I could butt up against it and use my trusty square to attach the noggins precisely. The timber screws drove into the noggins with ease, fixing them in place. Pre-drilling pilot holes avoids the wood splitting, and positioning your timber screws diagonally provides extra strength. To fix this frame into the wall securely, I'm using wall anchor plugs and screws that are specifically designed for concrete walls. However, due to the depth of the timber, if I were to put the plug directly into the wall as is, the screw's teeth then wouldn't bite into the part of the plug that it's intended to, providing no grip and therefore essentially useless. Instead, I'll need to lose the unnecessary part of the plug whilst keeping a minimum of 3 inches of plug that will sit in the wall for a good hold. Measure your plug with this in mind and remove the excess with a Stanley knife or a pair of snips. Now, the screw will bite into the plug as intended for a strong hold. Because the head of the plug is now gone, I've lost the lip that acts as an anchor to stop the plug going too far into the wall. So to avoid this happening, as this would also make your plug pretty much obsolete, I'll mark my masonry drill bit with some masking tape so that I drill into the wall the exact amount needed, meaning that the plug won't go in too far and alternatively it won't overhang either. Always use a drill bit that's around a millimetre smaller than the plug size so that the plug still fits in but needs to be tapped in place with a hammer for a secure hold in the wall. Like this, which is solid. A trick that I use to mark my drill holes perfectly is to screw into the timber first, allowing the sharp end of the screw to poke out slightly. Then, when you hold the timber up to the wall with your spirit level alongside it, once you've found where it's level and perpendicular, you can push the timber into the wall with some force to create markings from the sharp end of the screws that are protruding. Note, all of the protruding screws will need to be protruding at the same length for this to work. You can see here where the sharp end of the screw created a small hole in the wall, guiding me where to drill a hole. I then added a pencil mark on this occasion for good measure due to the pattern of the wallpaper, so that I didn't lose my mark when I reached for my drill. You can always check that your marks all line up perfectly with your spirit level again before committing to drilling the hole. Another little trick, as I don't gatekeep any information on my channel, is to label your wires whilst everything's disconnected and easily accessible. And you don't need to spend money on fancy labels for this. Most households have a first aid box, so pinch a few elastoplasts from it, write what each wire is on them with a biro, and voila, labelled wires. And this is where we're up to so far, all framed and ready to be boarded with MDF. So to do that, I start by measuring each face that I'll be boarding and jot down the measurement. I'm using MDF, which I used for my own media unit. It's solid, it can be filled, primed and painted, and it gives a perfectly smooth finish. It also means you don't have the weight of plasterboard and plaster, and you don't have the added cost and time of getting a plasterer in to do the work before you can then move on and paint and finish it all. I numbered every cut piece to reflect the measurements I jotted down in my notepad, and this was to help me remember where each piece was going. Then it was just a massive jigsaw. I'm essentially IKEA flat pack. As I work solo, I use clamps to hold the boards to the timber frame, double checking that they all fit precisely before committing to pinning them in place. Obviously the clamps can't hold them in place perfectly, hence them not appearing completely flush here, but you get the idea. Also, the less boards you can use, the less joins you'll have to fill, so don't be afraid of big boards that you can jigsaw your shape from to fit the space required, as the results will be a neater finish in the end. I preempted that a few of the boards I'd cut would need tweaks when back in the house to avoid obstacles such as wiring and the timber framing, so I just measured and fit these as I went, like so. When cutting out your nooks and crannies, allow a small contingency for manoeuvring the board in situ. For this one, I was able to just use my square to get the width measurement, followed by my tape for the length measurement, and then I had the box shape penciled and ready to cut out with the jigsaw. This wire was crossing over my timber frame, so a little bit trickier to cut, but the same principle. I just measured where the wire starts and ends, measured the distance from the wall, and then drew diagonally across to mimic the wire's position. Cut out and ready for the moment of truth. Success! Now I have a solid level base for the hidden storage cupboard. To fix my boards in place, I use a hammer and nails. However, if you paint over a nail like this, it'd show through. So use a nail punch to drive the nail a couple of millimetres further, and then you can fill this, sand it and paint over it, and no one will ever know that there was a nail there in the first place. And this is how we're looking. The MDF boards are pinned in place, ready to be filled and sanded. I haven't attached the bottom panel or cut the cupboard doors and fitted them yet, but we're taking shape. Oh, I actually also moved the wall lights to the side of the unit. This was their original position, just to jog your memory, but it no longer made sense as they weren't central on the wall either side of the unit. So I just flipped them onto the MDF panels, and this way they won't obstruct the future floating shelves. Right, cupboard time. As there was scrap MDF and CLS timber left over, I built some shelves inside the cupboards to utilise the deep space better. I mirrored the same on either side, the left being where Carole and Phil can house their skybox and DVD player, and it also helpfully hides where the TV aerial enters the home. The aim is for the cupboard doors to seamlessly blend into the unit so that you think it's just one big bottom panel. The floating shelves were positioned, and voila, we're ready for filler. Every join, no matter how small, and every hole from driving the nails in with the nail punch were filled. Also, Carole and Phil no longer wanted their current wallpaper, but they didn't want the walls stripped and replastered either, so they asked if I could just paint over the wallpaper. I explained that I could, but I would worry that the paint may cause the wallpaper to lift with the weight, or it may end up looking messy where the wallpaper joins are. Carole and Phil were happy to accept these risks, so I agreed that I'd use adhesive on any current lifted corners and try to use filler to make the joins more seamless, hoping that this would achieve a better finish overall for them. Once the filler is cured, you sand the areas and you can see how much of a smooth finish you're going to get. Just a side note, there'll be plenty areas that you just fill and sand once, but there may be areas usually larger or deeper joins, that you will need to go over a few times to get that perfect finish. So by that I mean fill, sand, fill, sand, fill, sand. You get the picture, and you'll know when you come to the last cycle and you're ready to paint. Of course, we didn't come this far just to half-arse the last part, and if you fail to prepare, prepare to fail. By that I mean primer is your friend. Let's not forget we've used MDF to board this unit, and MDF is extremely porous like a sponge, so the last thing I want is for it to absorb the paint and expand. Using an oil-based primer acts as a barrier against this so that the paint can adhere to a lovely prepped surface without risk. Also, as we're painting wallpaper, I'd fear that the paint would also soak into this, causing it to become soggy and lift off, or as it's a rather shiny and smooth wallpaper, paint might not adhere at all and just run or wipe off. So I used the same oil-based primer to give a good hardy base to ensure that the paint goes on a treat and with good coverage. Remember, being prepared and thinking ahead, oh, that rhymed, does take time, but it means that you do things properly, and most importantly, it means that you only do it once, saving money and time, as mistakes can become costly in the long run. Right, lecture over. Now let's watch things really come to life. How delicious is that navy paint? A perfect match for Carole and Phil's carpet and curtains. Now, I don't want to teach you Granny how to suck eggs, and I don't want you to sit and watch paint dry either, so I'll just quickly remind you to mask your edges and cover any areas that you don't want to get paint on. Then you can begin cutting in before moving on to your roller. This paint really did apply so nicely with very good coverage, meaning only one coat was required. We'll also partly thank a well-primed surface for that too. I chose to colour drench the inside of the storage cupboards, as I personally feel that it adds a bit of drama and makes the whole unit feel much more custom and high-end. The central part of the unit and the top of the base units were then painted in magnolia, as per Carole and Phil's wishes, to ensure that it matched the rest of the living room. As the floating shelves that were chosen were white, I decided to go that extra mile and paint them too, to really tie in the whole unit. The shelves were shiny and smooth, so I lightly sanded them, then primed them, and then I could paint them in the magnolia as well. This way they'll blend perfectly in with the unit and match, instead of being bright white shelves sticking out like a sore thumb. And just like that, we're finished. Who's ready for the big reveal? First, let's remind ourselves of the before. And now let's widen our eyes at this magnificent after. What a difference. Carole and Phil's dream vision has literally been brought to life, and I couldn't be happier that I was the one to provide that for them. Oh, what a fulfilling feeling to see the faces light up at the end result of this media unit. I'll pop some still photos on screen while I answer some common questions that I got asked over on Instagram. If there is anything I don't answer that you'd like to have known, then feel free to just pop your question in the comment section below and I'll be sure to answer you. First up was, did I enjoy doing it? Absolutely yes. I love being creative, but to be able to do this for somebody else and see the faces light up at the results, well, that was just so incredible. Start to finish, how long did it take? So building the actual frame and boarding it out didn't take long at all, around 3 days for me doing it on my own. I suppose this would be faster if you were working with someone else. Custom shelving and cupboards all added time, plus I primed and painted it for them as well. So prepping the surface, waiting for coats to dry in between, that all adds time. So depending on your design and your finish and whether you're doing the whole lot or you're having different trades come in, I think average time scales you could say between 4 to 9 days. Did you plaster it or just paint over the wood? Because plastering puts me off trying. Yeah, no plaster at all. The beauty of using MDF is that it's a really smooth finish. So just use a good oil-based primer like I mentioned in the video and paint will go on really lovely. What was the most fun bit and the least fun bit doing this? So the funnest bit was the reveal and seeing the faces light up by far. The worst, well, that was probably the cupboards. So they blagged me head much more than they should have, but we got there in the end. Where's the cupboard door handles to open them? So I used push to open catches so that door handles weren't necessary. You literally just push in slightly and the cupboard door opens, and then you can just open it the rest of the way. And then you literally just shut them by pressing them closed slightly too. This way they're hidden and it just gives the illusion of a full seamless bottom panel. And finally, how much does a fire like that cost? So the full panoramic glass fires that are integrated into these types of units definitely vary in price. You'd pay anywhere from £1.5 grand upwards from a Fireplace store. However, this particular one is a whopping 60 inches and we got it for under £800, which I personally think is fab. I'll link the one that was used in the description box below, and it's always linked in my Amazon storefront. So it's a good one to grab, and I can vouch that it's really high quality. Well, I hope those questions helped, but like I said, I'll be a further help in the comment section if needed. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. I certainly did, and I know Carole and Phil couldn't be more grateful. Thank you so much for watching. There's plenty more to come, so please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. It's free for you and it really helps me out a lot. So until next time, guys, with love always, Dalton.